asking for 30 minutes of your time. And we're going to cover some really great topics in technology and solutions. I'm really excited to kick off this series with a discussion about Qumulo Studio Q solution, which is around remote video editing. And we're joined by two incredible presenters and speakers, industry leaders from a great partner of Qumulo's and the leading platform for video. These folks are from Adobe, and so we're going to get started in just a few minutes. Before I do that, just some housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and it will be available to you on demand afterwards. You should receive an email a few days after this presentation if you're watching it live with us today with information on how to access the recording. We really encourage you all to participate in the chat and the Q&A as we go through. So if you have questions, definitely use the Q&A box. We have some folks who are joining us off camera that are actually monitoring the Q&A. So we'll get back to you in written form. If we have time, we're going to try to tackle some of your questions for our panelists as well. So I'm going to be joined today by Dave Helmly, Jonathan Carrera. We'll get to the conversation with them in a few minutes. But before we do that, I just want to go through a little bit about the Qumulo Studio Q solution. Then we're going to start our conversation and talk with Dave and John about some industry perspectives, the benefits that they've seen across the industry, and then how that's relevant to higher education and how colleges and universities can benefit from some of the innovations that the media and entertainment community is doing. Hopefully we'll have some time to get to your questions, and then we'll wrap up. So a few months ago, back in May, Qumulo launched something called Studio Q, which is the first branded solution for us that brings together several key technologies. And these are industry-leading technologies. So obviously Adobe Premiere Pro, Teradici, as well as AWS resources. So leveraging AWS CloudFormation templates and the Quick Start framework, you're able to bring together and orchestrate these really industry standard compelling technologies to create a remote video editing environment. We don't have a ton of time today to go through this in depth, but I encourage you all, this is meant to just be an introduction for you about what the solution is, and we're going to spend most of our time today on the conversation aspect. But at its core, what Qumulo Studio Q is meant to do is provide a flexible file system to create a studio on AWS. You can do this on demand, so you can easily spin up an editorial or post-production environment in a single namespace. And through orchestrating these industry standard technologies and industry leading technologies, the goal is to make it just very easy for you to do this securely and create these environments on demand. So you can spin them up fairly easily. You can also, because it's the cloud, you can also spin them down and stop using those resources as well. The ultimate goal here is to deliver fast and seamless collaboration. So you can create and edit, you can have multiple editors working on multiple timelines, and you can all do this simultaneously. And of course, at its core, this is leveraging the power of Adobe Creative Cloud. And so we're going to talk with Dave and John a lot more about what that means, but you get the same power and the same performance as you would in an on-prem workstation. And it's the same sort of Adobe Creative Cloud that you're accustomed to using in an on-prem workstation, but you can do that with the power of AWS. Now, this is a bit of an eye chart, and it's a bit of a architecture diagram. I am definitely not going to go through this in detail. I put this in today, and I wanted to share it with all of you just to give you a sense of the orchestration that is taking place with this Qumulo Studio Q solution. I know many of you are technical experts. Others of you may not be as familiar with the technologies involved here. We're not going to go into this in depth today, but we have systems engineers and we have technical experts that will sit down with you at any time and go through this in great detail. So definitely let us know and reach out to us if you'd like that technical deep dive conversation, if you'd like to have a hands-on demo, or in some cases, we can provide a trial environment that you can use on your campus. So we're not going to go into all this in detail, but it gives you some sense of the complexity that we're aiming with the Studio Q solution to make radically simple for you. So the idea is that what you see here in the Studio Q box in the center of this is what we've orchestrated together, bringing together these industry standard and industry leading solutions. And what we've seen at Qumulo is a lot of adoption across media and entertainment. So Qumulo has been very fortunate over the past few years, and now with the Studio Q solution as well, to be leveraged by really industry leading studios and effect shops and other organizations in media and entertainment. And I think what we're going to do now is kind of shift gears a little bit and kind of talk about how colleges and universities can benefit from some of the technologies here, and that you all can get the benefit on your campus of what these studios are leveraging with Qumulo and with Adobe. So at this point, I'd like to introduce my colleagues and our panelists today and the folks who are joining us for this conversation. So Dave, I wonder if you could introduce yourself and say a few words.
Sure thing, Andrew. So Dave Helmly, I might know some of you out there, over 25 years at Adobe and 35 years in the industry, and get to work with a lot of great partners out there as part of my sort of day-to-day job. We're part of a worldwide strat development team, really looking at technologies that bring Adobe applications like Premiere Pro and After Effects to life and to new workflows. And enterprises and certainly education, I would put under that umbrella, always have challenges that are coming up. So partners are one way to get there, and I think the best way to get there. So with that, I'll pass it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Look forward to digging in a little bit more. John, would you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Jonathan Carrera, Strategic Relations Manager for Creative Cloud Video at Adobe. Same team as Dave Helmly, who did a wonderful job of introducing that team. I work with our media entertainment clients coast to coast, but more specifically, we're focused on the higher education institutions, film, TV, video programs at our schools. If you've attended any of our higher education major events, I'm the one that helps facilitate those. And really, our goal is really to just help you be successful with your video workflows, and that's the goal here. And a big part of that is working with partners in the partner ecosystem.
Great. Thanks, John, and thanks, Dave. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now because we're really going to spend the bulk of our time today in a conversation just between the three of us. And Dave, I'd love to start out with you and just kind of ask you the sort of general question that I know we all have been thinking about in our professional lives and personal lives. But from what you've seen with the Creative Cloud community and Adobe's customers, like what have been some of the impacts of the pandemic and COVID-19 and all those trends towards remote work? What have you been seeing with the customers and partners you talk with?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all been doing this for a while, right? We're probably all worried about, what the patterns kind of are from here. So we're getting adjusted to this. The best way that I like to put it in sort of one phrase, and it's an old Adobe tagline, and that's, what are the tools for the new work? And I think that a lot of these remote tools that we're going to talk about, today, Qumulo being a part of that with AWS, is just that. It is a new tool to get work done. And some of the things that we're seeing, kind of, I think an uptick in is just teamwork in general. When you're in the office, everybody kind of is in their own little, workspace in their edit bay or wherever, or if you're certainly creating video your own way, you might go over and maybe I'll go talk to Jonathan and sort of get his opinion on something. But now we're really kind of, forced to collaborate one way or another. And there's lots of different tools to do that, Teams, Slack, these types of tools, or tools that are just built into our own applications like team projects and productions. But I think it's also changed the behavior around. So, if we take Jonathan and I working on a program, together on a video together, even by the way, if we're students, because I think this really fits in well, we have to communicate for one it's kind of lonely working at home sometimes. I think we can all all agree with that. It's like you just want this camaraderie, and I think it has really opened up, a new chapter, in collaboration. And I may need to work with Jonathan to keep creative, right? So the two of us are trying to work off each other, and I see more of that in the industry right now. So that's kind of what I've been seeing for. I think it's accelerating, probably, more than the past year, probably past year and a half. It's been amazing to watch.
Yeah, I think that's right. I've seen that as well, where in some sense, trends and things that were there previously just got accelerated, or you couldn't ignore them anymore. And I think one of those things was around remote work. Also, in the case of higher education, it's remote teaching and learning. And John, I wonder if you could kind of pick up on that and sort of discuss how some of those trends. We're all familiar with kind of the shift to remote instruction, but if you could say a little bit more about how those how the pandemic and those trends and what kind of Dave was mentioning have impacted colleges and universities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there isn't a university I've spoken to that when the pandemic hit wasn't concerned about fairness and inequity. Meaning, before everyone, there was a computer lab. No matter what students' financial backgrounds are, they had access to that computer lab, the access to a computer to do their work. When the pandemic hit, that suddenly became a problem because not everyone has a great personal computer that can do heavy video work, right? So how do we get to students, access to computing power so they can just continue the curriculum and get their fair share of proper education from the school that school's giving, So I think that's been a forcing factor, especially in terms of where remote video. What are the remote video solutions, right? Remote video editing environments help solve that, right? This way, no matter where they are, whether, what computer they have at home, they still have access to continue their work with the equipment they need. And even beyond that, just the agility. This was, before the pandemic, it was the agility. Can I edit this at home outside the computer lab without having to travel into the school, into the city, and be able to work at this at the dorm? That's always been top of mind as well. So that's really been a key concern there, is really, how do we, for faculty, it's been continue that curriculum and keeping the fairness and equity in terms of, like, it doesn't matter what your financial situation is, you can continue doing good creative work, even if you don't personally own an expensive computer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if I think back to kind of my experiences as a student, and I was not a creative, but for me, that computer lab and being able to go and print and have easy access to it, that was something I relied a lot on myself way back when I was a student. So definitely understand that. And John, if I could follow up on that and kind of pose it in a different way. I mean, throughout the pandemic, we've seen, broadcast media, especially news organizations, especially, studios, they pivoted very quickly, right? I mean, the CNN, the other broadcast networks, they didn't miss a step. They had to be always on. And, obviously that took a lot of effort on their part in the early days of the pandemic. Are there lessons that colleges and universities can take from how they were able to do that in turn could help solve some of those equity challenges that you were mentioning?
Yeah, lessons and also an opportunity there, right? They have that same friction. It's like, okay, schools have to, figure out remote media management and remote working, because there's a lot of friction there to do that when it comes to handling media. But with that becomes this really golden opportunity where if they're working and they've cracked the code for remote video editing, remote media management, those students are now learning really the identical or nearly identical workflows that they would be doing out in the workplace. And in some cases, they'd be ahead of the game, because not all the workplaces that have completely, solved their remote media in remote editing, workflow issues. So to have that situation, I think, where students are just doing workplace workflows right out of the bat, now that really helps them in their career. So it's a really nice opportunity there when students are learning. And that's what faculty want. The students be learning as close to possible what the industry is doing, not graduate and have skills already be out of date. They want them to be up to date, or even better, ahead of the curve.
Yeah, great. And Dave, to kind of come back to you, I wonder, and also the sort of Studio Q solution, because it launched a few months ago, as I was mentioning. It is in part in response to some of these trends that we're all living through, and the need for sort of remote capabilities, the need to leverage the cloud. But at the same time, cloud VDI workstations have been around a long time. The industry has been thinking about this for a while. There are different solutions and different ways of approaching that technical challenge. HPE, Teradici, others, other technology providers have been kind of, working on these issues for some time. It seems like there's been an inflection point, maybe even before the pandemic, but especially now during the pandemic in terms of the technology. So I wonder if you could talk to some of the benefits that Adobe's customers are seeing, some of your sense of where the industry is at in terms of the technology that can be applied to, some of these challenges and opportunities that John was speaking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's just easy to say the last, 2.5 years of my life have kind of been dedicated to figuring out VDI. And that eye chart that you put up with all the wires going everywhere, that's just stuff that we live and breathe. And I'll be the first to tell you, and I think Jonathan will appreciate this, no student wants to see that, and no university wants to support that. So the one thing about the Studio Q that I think they can have confidence in is that is what's behind the scenes. Let's just call it what it is. And this is what we've worked out, like you had said, with some of the CNN, some of the NBC groups and Fox News, a lot of places at Viacom, they've kind of all figured this out and have figured out that, hey, this is a really good workflow. Our tools, I love to say on the video side for sure, and certainly Photoshop and Illustrator, it just works. I mean, it's great. We have done some fine tuning kind of here and there, and you guys have done an amazing job of just packaging it up to just make it simple and say, how many of these do you want? Here you go. It's kind of vetted and tested. We've certainly, reviewed it with you and looked at it and said, yeah, this is a good solution. And you guys are going to stand behind it and support it, and they can have confidence. And I just, think about, many of the universities and film schools that Jonathan has to work with. The last thing they need is all these support calls to figure out why something doesn't work. And the ability to be able to log in to a remote system where things are just guaranteed to have the experience, assuming you have, a decent, I call it a Starbucks connection. So it doesn't need to be anything too crazy, but, dorm connection that you can get to that virtual computer on the cloud. It just works. You just double click on the client, it launches, all your media is there. The colleges and film schools, I think, could just have predetermined folders with lesson planning, and they'll just naturally go to those different directories. And again, it works on Mac, it works on Windows. It's pretty routine. So you don't have all these limitations about having a computer that may not have the local compute power to run whatever lesson they're trying to run. So it just works. It's simple. There's a whole nother side around security where I might not be able to have access to certain folders until the instructor's ready for me to get to that folder. I can't kind of jump ahead. So from that standpoint, or, maybe I'm working on something, confidential. If I've got things that are going on that, maybe I'm working on it. If I'm a student, maybe I've got an opportunity to work on a senior project and I'm working on some confidential stuff there. You kind of got that side of it. So we do see the security side entering for a lot of the customers that you had talked about, and certainly when you showed your happy M&E customer slide, we share a lot of those together, of course, and we have this conversation with them all the time, just around the simplicity and the security, and again, just to close it out. And you can't overstate it. You packaged it and made it simple, and now it's not so much of an eye chart.
And I think that it's great to hear you say that, Dave. I've believed that, and I've learned that during my time here at Qumulo, and that is one of the reasons why I show that slide, because I'm not of this community, and so I actually don't understand all the nuances in that slide. but why I show it is to basically convey that we've taken all this complexity and simplified it. And I think one of the things that, it's one of the most common questions that we get back from, from customers who are considering this solution, because, for decades in tech, whatever the tech is, the pitch has been like, hey, it's making it simple. But in this case, and sometimes that's smoke and mirrors, sometimes that's real. And in this case, it's taken a lot of effort and a lot of partnership, but it's really simplified, some seriously complex workflows.
And you are using industry standard components, right, I should say, right? So that's the other really important part. There's no real special sauce other than the collection of things that you put together and the support you put behind it, right, for packaging this up. But people that want to know, we've already vetted. I mean, you mentioned the partner Teradici, and we don't need to get into that. That is a client component that anybody that's in the industry or in IT will be fully aware of what that is. So on the security side, you're like, we vetted that client, then that's a checkbox, right? You're not like adding something new. So industry standard components as part of the solution are also very key.
Yeah, that's right. And Dave, you mentioned a few minutes ago some of the joint customers and some of the customer reactions. Would you say a little bit more as we start to wrap up about kind of feedback that you've gotten from customers that have taken a look at this solution? And then we can kind of see if there's any questions from the audience here. But any additional kind of customer feedback from M&E that's come up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing that sort of surprised me is we had very few calls on support on the tech side, right? Like you're logging into a predictable environment, right? It gets, I log in, I log out, Jonathan logs in, he logs out. It's the same system. His system's not different than my system. They're configured the same way. They're configured with what we call the Adobe personas. So we have some helpx pages that says, what kind of editor are you? And you guys have done a nice job of reviewing those and go, yeah, if you need, this kind of edit, this kind of creative, we can kind of match the memory and the compute power behind it. So you're getting a predictable setup where it's almost like a custom turnkey computer every time you log in. And with that, a lot of the broadcasters and media houses that I work with on a daily basis, and even some of the movie studios that we're now working with that have decided to go give this a try, I think are liking just the simplicity and the predictability. And that always boils back down to what we were talking about earlier, even with students, is support. I just need it to work. And kind of no excuses. So, that's the biggest takeaway, is it's a vetted sort of system that we've kind of coached you guys on how to set this up, how to get it to work. Let's run some test projects on it, and just have it work. And I think it's a great environment.
Great. Well, John, as we start to wrap up our conversation here, let's kind of come back to higher ed and how universities can, leverage this simplicity and leverage this solution, and how they're thinking about cloud VDI. I think we've talked a little bit about the kind of teaching and learning and the lab type use cases. Universities also have their own in-house media production, whether that's for athletics or even just kind of campus overview, campus tour type videos. Some of those needs are kind of what we would call sort of corporate video. What are the typical, video infrastructure, video editing infrastructure needs that you see universities having, and kind of how does cloud VDI, fit into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, one very, basic need is like the shared storage need, right? So whether it's the broadcast studio for the college, for the sports team, or just the film and video program with student filmmakers, when the pandemic hit and folks couldn't come into the computer labs, some faculty had to make 20 copies of media on 20 different hard drives and distribute that to the class, right? Resolve now, if one's using, enterprise, storage there in a VDI environment. Now that just save the faculty member. God, I don't even know how long that takes to do, depending on what the footage is that they have to work with for the class. So I think even that basic level there, which is like what media, where's the media living, and how do I distribute this to a class, or to an entire creative team in the school that's on staff, or the sports creative team, right there. That alone, and having one, regardless of location, having access to it, I mean, that's a huge infrastructure, time saving, time unlocking gain right there to begin with.
Yeah, great. And I think we're starting to run short on time. We did get one question just around the kind of general benefits to colleges and universities from remote video studio options. So I don't know, maybe this is a lightning round type question. John, you were just sort of talking about the ability to not be copying physical media and things like that. But any additional just like quick benefits that you see to colleges and universities? And then Dave, would love to pose that to you as well. Sure. as we round this out. But John, any quick final thoughts about how universities can benefit from remote video studios?
I mean, I think it's going to be the same probably as with broadcasters, right, Dave, and really anyone. I mean, we're talking about time and savings unlocking, right? It's why what drives anyone to do a solution is, does it unlock times, unlock savings, does it unlock the ability to spend more time on being creative. We're seeing that now with commute times. Like, do I take an hour and a half to the city and to start editing, or do I just hop into the next room and jump into a VDI environment and immediately start editing? I just gained 90 minutes of editing time, right? And for me personally, I think the most beautiful part of it is accessing media. Now you can have, like, again, me, Dave, you, we could all be accessing the same Premiere Pro project via, say, Productions, and all editing together. And that was like really not really heard of, before the pandemic. It was all on-prem, and everyone had to really be there. And now that has changed, which I think is a game changer. People use that word a lot, kind of loosely, but I think that's truly a game changer, revolutionary in terms of time unlock saved for everyone.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I'll add for you real quick. Now we're coming up on time, but I think the biggest benefit for a teacher trying to stick to curriculum, just to go down the sort of, it's creative, but it is institutional and instructive, or it's like for the 100 level classes and maybe 200 level classes, to use that as an example. No matter whether it's video editing or not, I think VDI offers a number of solutions. You could be in an AutoCAD class running CATIA, right? It really doesn't make any difference. It's just, we need lesson and lesson planning with read-only files that people can log into, do their planning, and just bring a smile to your face, Jonathan. Students, unfortunately, may not have any excuse now not to get work done, because there's always a screenshot that they're willing to take to say why something didn't work. I don't have enough disk space because I had to download this thing or whatever. It's like you're just gonna use that. So that's a big thing for me. And then lastly, I think I always get back to the old Adobe tagline, tools for the new work. A new tool is going to be, iPhone, 13's camera to cloud, now shooting ProRes, right? So think about what that means to an up and coming student that wants the latest. Maybe they're in journalism, maybe they're just going to be doing, set design and walkthroughs, but I can now shoot this video. There'll be tons of different camera to cloud tools to get that file where it needs to go. And I shoot that. And now I get the opportunity to have someone, maybe Jonathan's going to put together what we call a string out or a daily. And I would teach that in a journalism school, because I think this is going to be huge for lots of industries, but certainly news and things that need to happen now. These phones are shooting incredible video. And now we have an amazing, codec, from Apple that, which is an industry standard on ProRes, which means, higher quality on a mobile device that I can keep regenerating, titles and whatever else I need to do to it without losing, quality. And I can get that into what we call a play out format, like an XD cam, or, we can go down any of these paths. But I just think that students coming out will have a whole lot of things to talk about in those interviews, that what makes you right for this job. And they can talk about, well, we worked on all the remote editing, we've done camera to cloud, we've done this, and now you've got new tools coming into a workplace, and you already know how to work remotely, which is going to be, part of the job Because one of the things, and I'll end with this and turn it back to you, Andrew, we're hearing from a lot of the corporate customers out there that there will be not, we will not be returning to work the way that we did and the numbers that we had, because remote editing with all these various tools is working way better than we thought. We're dealing with the security, the support is easy to have. Internet is becoming better and better, certainly around the planet. And this is the new work. So I think you guys have got a great product at a great time.
Great, thank you so much. On that note, Dave, I think we'll wrap up here. Thank you both for joining us, Dave and Jonathan, and sharing your thoughts here. We definitely want to continue this conversation. And so there's additional information about Studio Q on the Qumulo website. As I mentioned throughout, we did not go deep on this solution at all. That was by design. We wanted to have a conversation and introduce it to you, but we have technical resources who can give you that technical deep dive. We can do a hands-on technical demo. We can also set up trials, right? As we've been talking about, this is incredibly easy to spin up and get going, which means, you should hold us to that. And so if you're interested, reach out to Qumulo. We will demonstrate that for you. We will let you get your hands on it yourselves. And then last but not least here, this is the first webinar in a series that we're doing for colleges and universities, where we want to inform you about a variety of different solutions and technologies. So if this has been useful to you, I hope you will check out the others in the series. We will next week be shifting gears, and we'll be talking about disaster recovery type options, which has also been a technology that's been transformed with the cloud and throughout the pandemic as well. So thank you again to Dave and John from Adobe for joining us, and thank all of you for joining us as well.